So I wanted to thank everyone for coming. This is our second event we've done with KBSYS. They've been one of our great preferred partners as well as HPE in Korea. So thank you again for having us. I appreciate that. And thank you for all of our customers and users who were able to fly from Europe and the US to all the way to Korea to come do this event with us. I really appreciate that. And so does our company. I wanted to start off with just a little bit about some of the IT trends that are happening out there in the world, and then how that ties back to our technology and how that those types of trends in our technology are impacting or could be impacting your business together. So there's three big trends coming out in the world today, right? There's a enrichment of data-driven applications. We're seeing all types of new distributed systems, whether they're done through distributed databases, streaming applications, analytics engines, messaging queues. These are all being used in Silicon Valley all the way through global 2000 industries. A lot of the technology that we started working with when we were first using Mesos was at places like Twitter, Airbnb, and Netflix, and Uber. And we see that these technologies, as they grew, they became a need for combining all these applications together to really run what's called microservices, or the new stack of applications. And those things, as you see here, comprise of a term called cloud native. Right, cloud native offerings and applications. And these in this world today encompass a lot of data-rich applications. So 75% of cloud native applications are built with streaming data. And so as we saw this trend happening, a lot of those applications were being integrated into our technology. They were being integrated to Mesos, integrated to DCOS, to give people the best of breed new technologies on top of our platform. And so we have over 100 applications that are integrated with our products. The other shift that was happening is, if you think back to years ago, people were all on-premise because there was no public cloud. So they were using bare metal machines. Then there was private clouds with things like OpenStack and VMware. And now you have the ability to go to a public cloud or to stay on-premise. Or what we see most of our customers, probably like all of you, are doing is they're doing hybrid models, right? The ability to have on-premise for cost savings, for control, for regulatory reasons, because it's faster, because it's cheaper. But there are times where you want the ability, the easy button to go to some place like Amazon or different clouds. And so we have the ability to run with both of those infrastructure layers. Our technology wraps any cloud, any on-premise technology all together, so you have one control plane for your hybrid environments. And you see articles, 84% of enterprises are choosing hybrid. I'm sure, how many people in this room have hybrid architectures? Raise your hand. Okay, so it's something that we're seeing more and more and more. But the problem with a lot of these technologies, as you see a lot of companies going public in the US or in exchanges in Asia as well, one of the things they're disclosing as a key risk to their business is the amount of costs they're beholden to an Amazon, for example. So you guys all know Lyft, and Uber just filed as well. But you see a lot of these filings. Snapchat had it as well, where one of the number one risk factors is the cost being paid to a public cloud. And in this case, $8 million a month is going to Amazon from Lyft. I can tell you, for our company, our second biggest cost, second to people, is Amazon, right? We do a lot of load testing. We dog food our own product with Amazon to make sure it works for our customers. It's a very significant cost, multiple millions a year for us. And we're not nearly the size of Lyft, and I'm sure some of you as well. And then the other intersection that's happening, since really Linux, open source has had a place in the enterprise world. And we're seeing that become more and more prolific. Many people are choosing open source over closed source. And Red Hat was probably the best example of a open source successful company. It was the largest technology M&A in history, bought by IBM for almost $35 billion. And we'll see what happens, with the open source charter at Red Hat under Big Blue, under IBM over time. But there's other great stories. GitHub was acquired by Microsoft for $7.5 billion because of the access to developers that Microsoft wanted for things like Azure. And these things are pretty interesting. We actually share, one of our board members was a board member of GitHub, so we know this story pretty well. And the fact that you can have all these users and these great technologies at no cost is fantastic. But a lot of times people need help bringing all those open source technologies together, and they might need to go deeper on some of those applications themselves. So that brings us to what we do. So our mission statement is to make it insanely easy to build and scale world-changing technology. And these pictures in the background are actual real use cases that we work with every day. So on the top left, you have JP Morgan's banking application, which we help power their back-end data services. On the bottom left, you have Royal Caribbean's cruise ships, where we do offline fast data on the edge, and the edge is literally a floating data center. They will have anywhere between 5 and 50 nodes per ship to help work with their consumer application. So when you're on the ship and you want to book an excursion or a restaurant or check the weather or the itinerary, it has all of that. It also has recommendation engines on the edge for fast data processing. If, like myself, I like to go gamble and they see me in the casino all the time, they might send me a recommendation for more chips and things like that I can go purchase through the app. On the top, we have geospatial companies we work with, so satellite mapping, both for governments and commercial entities. And we work with a number of connected car companies, and we'll talk a little bit about that while we're here. So this is the old world I mentioned a little bit, and where that old world went from physical to cloud, what we call 1.0, to today's world, which is really cloud 2.0 and cloud native. And most of you are familiar probably with these paradigms. We went from legacy software, ERP, CRM, millions of business users, monolithic code bases, on-prem data centers, and the winners were the kind of Suns and Windows and Intel infrastructures, which we call the Sun Wintel. And then what happened was we had sort of Cloud 1.0, which was SaaS, think Salesforce, think Zora, think companies like that, with Web 2.0, billions of internet and mobile users, virtualized dedicated silo services, and CIOs would choose between data center or cloud, right? They would make a binary decision. And a lot of the winners there were, of course, on the private cloud side, VMware, and AWS on the public cloud side. But the world has changed. You hear things like cloud first, cloud native, and buzzwords like IoT, AI, edge, open source software, which is OSS. Trillions of users and devices. Think about the connected home, the connected car, the connected anything. Distributed unified data ops and DevOps. So there's a new phrase called data ops. It's the intersection of, basically the data science, data engineering world and the operations world. Just like we saw with developers and ops and DevOps. That's becoming more and more of a phrase that we're hearing at Mesosphere. And it's hybrid data center and cloud. Right? It's not a binary decision between your on-prem data center or cloud. We're seeing a lot of companies burst to the cloud, use it where it's easy to spin up services, where it's cost-effective and they want to buy spot instances for bursting and things like that. And Mesosphere DCOS lives at that intersection. So some of our, what we call horizontal use cases, because they cut across many verticals, are IoT and edge, real-time decisions and advanced analytics, and personalized experiences. So, we have folks from BMW here. We have, I told you a little bit about Royal Caribbean for personalized experiences, and we'll talk a little bit about China Unicom. We work with Riot Games inside their game for League of Legends, and that, as you guys probably know, is owned by Tencent. So we work with them out of California, but we're also trying to work with them out of Asia as well. And at the heart of cloud native architectures that we're seeing today, you really see, users, devices, sensors that are bringing in information that needs to be transported, stored, analyzed, and served back up, and then reacting to those events, right? So you see technologies for like Kafka to transport the data, Cassandra, distributed database to store, Spark for analytics, and Kubernetes to serve back up the data, right? And so we build this world where you can build, deploy, automate, and scale all of your technologies together. And these are just, an illustrative example of the applications. This is one reference architecture. You can substitute, Cassandra with other databases, Kubernetes with other scheduling systems. So really, the way enterprises think about things, where you have a DevOps world, right, where you want to build, deploy, and serve. Think about your PaaSes, your OpenShifts, your Pivotals. That help you do that piece of the world. But then your data ops was handled somewhere else. You might have had a Hadoop farm, or you were thinking about fast data, right? And the public cloud lets you do both. And it was really the first paradigm that let you have both DevOps and data ops together. But it came with a risk. You had proprietary APIs. You were locked in. The cloud providers could access data. And there was high costs, and there was regulatory concerns. So Mesosphere DCOS gave you both the data ops and DevOps world, but also the freedom to be in all of those clouds and also to be in hybrid worlds, right? So you can bring things on-prem and off-prem. You can do cloud arbitrage and save costs. We've worked with one of the biggest banks in the US to literally write a policy engine on top of DCOS to say, I want to run a Kubernetes workload. Show me the cheapest way to run it in Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud, and on-premise with chargeback. Do that for Spark. Run it, give me that application the fastest way possible. Show me that policy, or a hybrid policy that shows you speed and costs and other things you can write into the policy engine. So that was super interesting. So that lets you arbitrage. We can live on the edge, right? No pun intended, but we can literally live on the edge. And so when you work with Amazon and you have Outpost, or you work with Azure Stack, they're very prescriptive about what the prerequisites are on the edge. And with us, you can bring your own infrastructure. You can bring your own cloud infrastructure. We don't care. We're infrastructure agnostic, and we've always been that way. And for bursting, whether you want to burst to any public cloud, we stand up your clusters in both Amazon and on-prem, and you can just layer DCOS over, and you can do that. We actually work with Verizon, and for the Super Bowl, they spin up 500 Amazon large instances, just because if the game is very good, they'll need more compute because there's a lot of activity on the platform, right? And so they have that on standby, and it all looks like one pane of glass that's the same between their on-premise and cloud environments, and they have that extra capacity needed on standby. So when you think about our ecosystem and what we do, DCOS is that platform. We make your infrastructure agnostic, so below us is any infrastructure. Bring your own infrastructure, run an OS on there, like a RHEL, CentOS, et cetera, and then install DCOS. And now all your infrastructure will talk to DCOS and those APIs, which are based on open source technology. We do have an enterprise edition for extra security features and things like that, as you guys probably know. And then on top of DCOS sits 100 plus applications, a lot of which are open source technologies. And we bring them onto our platform quickly and judiciously as they come to market. So for example, with Kubernetes, we were the fastest company to certify on a new Kubernetes distribution because we have a partnership with Google, and we're using plain vanilla Kubernetes. We don't have a separate distribution. We run open source Kubernetes on top of DCOS, so you can write to those APIs and Kubernetes and all that stuff. And we put a little bit of a framework wrapper around that, and we get often certified in a couple business days. whereas other competitors might take 6 to 9 months to certify on a new application because a lot of it's built into a proprietary distribution. This gets a little bit more technical, but one of the things we want to do is give you a cloud-like experience inside your own data center, right? So we want to give you that same easy button you have with a public cloud. So for Kubernetes, for example, there's 21 core steps to set it up. We changed those 21 steps into a simple command line. It's DCOS package, install Kubernetes, and you're off and running with Kubernetes. You can do a scale up, scale down just as simply as an install with Kubernetes. And just one example, we can do this for all of our applications. So just Hadoop, Elasticsearch, Kafka, et cetera, all that same command line functionality is available for all those applications as well. So, we talk about some of our use cases, and we have some folks here from working with BMW. One of our public references is Audi, and here's a sample connected car architecture. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but you can see these things are pretty complex, and we help orchestrate a number of applications, right, on that technology. Royal Caribbean is slightly different here. A lot of the same core technologies being used, but they go offline. These ships are out to sea, and they lose connectivity, right? So what they do is they sync when they get back to port through satellite uplinks that go back to centralized IT, which is typically on-premise or Amazon, and then they can sync back with the floating data centers, as we call them, literally on the ships. So they get real-time syncing every time they port every day or so. Typically, they're at port every day or other day. And so you see this connection. And we've done stuff with other offline technologies. We've worked with healthcare providers who are setting up hospitals without walls in challenged areas and conflict areas where they may not have great connectivity, and they're using satellite uplink to do that as well. So if you tie this all back to home, the trends are, we're just seeing, there was an Economist article that said, data's the new oil. You guys may have seen that, right? The amount of data being stored increases at least 100% year over year, right? Even though it's compounding, it still increases at least 100% year over year in the world. And so these data-rich applications that we run on our DCOS are super important for anyone's business these days. We work with a number of oil and gas manufacturers as well, who we work with the shipping manufacturers as well. And they're finally getting to digital transformations where they're putting sensors on all the containers on cargo ships, where they're putting sensors on all of the vehicles in warehouses for forklifts and things like that to make it either safer or more efficient for their businesses. Hybrid is here to stay. Gartner has done surveys. Forrester's done surveys, and most CXOs are talking about hybrid and pushing those initiatives down into their regions. You hear a lot of regional clouds coming to play because of regulatory or better availability zones and speeds in their data centers close by to where their customers are. And that's great, but a lot of your businesses are also global in nature, or at least regional in nature. And those regional clouds might be great for that region, but not be great everywhere in the world. And then the open source technologies are, one of my favorite trends. We've been working with them for a long time, and we really want to give you the best, newest technologies as they come to market. We were also very quick to bring TensorFlow to market, even when it was a new technology. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Jupyter in the data science space, but we recently brought that onto our platform as well, and are keeping that version current for our customers. So, it's exciting to come to new regions at Korea, which we've been working in for about a year and a half, especially with KB, and to map to some of your trends. So I'll be excited to hear about, as we go through our journey over the next 2 days, some of the things that you guys are most concerned about and how our technology can help you. Thank you very much.